And we're back talking about race and gender ideology in schools. And also, is there a better way to approach these issues? So, before the break, we were talking about the tragic story involving Richard Bilkstow. Kate, I want to ask you about that situation from your perspective. Do you have any thoughts about what happened and also sort of how this could have been better handled?
I think Richard's situation actually exemplifies the problem with diversity, equity, and inclusion as it's currently being promoted. Ms. Thompson seems to run on the assumption that's common to many DEI facilitators that white men have all the power in our society. But the Workplace Safety and Insurance Board actually found that Richard, as the white male in the situation, was the person who had been bullied. Um, and this is unfortunately quite common. We know that critical race theory actually, rather than helping the people it says it's going to help, its main effect seems to be to make people less sympathetic towards poor whites in particular. Now, Richard did not suffer from any financial disadvantage, but he didn't believe in the soft bigotry of low expectations, and he wanted all of his students, regardless of their skin color, to have the best opportunity at an education and to be empowered both through honest history and academic rigor.
Mhm.
And it boggles my mind that we should be attacking people for wanting that kind of equal treatment. So I had the privilege of meeting Richard through our mutual work in the Foundation Against Intolerance and Racism. We worked together to found the Ontario chapter. And it is a shame that even though there are many Canadians who are very concerned about this, Richard somehow felt isolated and that he could not reach out to those of us who would have supported him through these dark times. The thing I'd like to add about that actually is that my last conversation with Richard was around concerns he had about a forthcoming article from the Toronto Star, which he suspected might end up as a carefully curated hit piece. And I think if you compare the coverage across outlets, you can see where his concerns might have come from. Um, we need a better way to have an honest conversation about all of this.
Well, obviously, it's extremely sad what happened to him, that he didn't feel like there was a way out of this trap that he had found himself in because of the way that this initial DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion training session had taken place, where there was sort of this pile on and this bullying of him. Um, a couple of both of you, I think, have mentioned the term critical race theory. My understanding of it, sort of big picture, is essentially that it's looking at a situation where there's inequality and then trying to basically blame it due to racism. Is that kind of how critical race theory operates? Kate, could you give us the quick, maybe 10-second description of how that works, or what the thinking
Right.
is?
So I think it would depend on the academic that you were reading, but Robin DiAngelo is a very popular person on this topic, and she says the question is not whether racism happened, but how did racism happen.
Mm.
And I think that's intellectually dishonest. We have lots of evidence that actually socioeconomic standing and family status have more impact on a person's life outcomes than the color of their skin. So to say that it's only always racism that determines a student's outcome is it's it's simply dishonest, and it means that we solve a problem that doesn't exist and create one that does.
Well, thanks for the quick briefing there. I think you said a lot better than I could. It seems very simplistic to just chalk every problem up to racism, that it exists everywhere. Barbara, what do you see as the fundamental problem with these diversity, equity, and inclusion training sessions?
Well, the problem is that her technique of bullying and of assuming that if your job is to listen, she said. White people have to listen. They are not allowed to argue. So this idea that if you nod your head in agreement, you're a racist who understands you're a racist. If you push back and say you're not a racist, then for sure you're a racist. It's kind of like the witch trials where, you know, they would dunk you in the water. If you drowned, then you were innocent, and if you didn't drown, you were. It's no win situation for white people.
We'll be back with more on this topic and others in just a moment.